Hi, today at Fit Yoga we're going to talk about things that are good for hip mobility. So we're going to show you a few hip openers that we do in yoga. Some of my favorite poses, by the way. So let's begin coming down into downward facing dog, and from there we're going to come into a couple of lunges. So I'm just going to fold forward and step my feet back, come into down dog. So down dog is always a great place to start for a standing pose. And now from here I'm going to bring my right foot forward and come into a lunge. Now at this point my knee is off the mat, so this would be a high lunge. An option here is to bring your knee down for a low lunge. So I'll show you both. So in a low lunge, I'm getting a good stretch through this pelvic area right here, right through this left hip. From here, I'm going to bring my arms overhead and really stretch into the pose. It's a wonderful stretch through the hip. And if you can hold this for maybe 3 to 5 breaths, you'll get a great stretch. I'm going to bring my arms down and show it to you as a high lunge now. So that would be what we call a low lunge. This would be a high lunge. If it's in your practice to do both, I would highly recommend it. If it's best for you to stick with your knee down and do the low lunge, that's also great. So stretching into it, breathing as you stretch, and then bringing those arms down. Step back into downward facing dog, and we're going to do that on the other side. So when you're in down dog in between, if you'd like to do what we call walk the dog and alternate bending a knee and pressing a heel to the mat, it's a great way to stretch out your hamstrings in between. And then step that left foot forward, and we're going to do the lunge on this side. So again, I'll begin with my left knee down, or my right knee down, come up into a low lunge, really stretching through that right hip. It feels so good. And then another option, as I discussed, was to come up into a high lunge. So now my knee is off the mat, and be sure you check this alignment, that your torso is aligned properly, heart over the hips and head over the heart, and then bring those arms up and stretch through it. So from here you can do whatever works for you. Add a little back bend, just stretching through, and then release, and step back to downward facing dog again. Now this time I'm going to come into pigeon. So from down dog, I'm going to bend the right knee and bring it up between my hands. So the right knee is up close to the right hand. I have this foot up as close as possible to the front of the mat. If you can bring this leg to parallel to the front, that's great. I'm going to check that my thighs are parallel to the sides of the mat. That's going to ensure that I have my hips squared forward, and begin in what we call proud pigeon. So in this pose, I'm lifting my heart, relaxing those shoulders. So in addition to this great stretch through the hip, I'm getting a good back bend. So from here, breathe into this for 3 to 4 breaths, stretching into it. And then we'll move into what we call sleeping pigeon. So I'm going to bring my arms forward and bring my forehead all the way to the mat. And then just let myself sink into this pose. So again, I would hold this for 3 to 5 breaths. And something that you can do here is to provide a block or a rolled up blanket under your hip to help support you. Always acceptable to do that. So you're really getting a good stretch through this hip. And after that 3 to 5 breaths, walk yourself up. Going to come back to that downward facing dog again. And then come into the left side. So I'm going to, bend the left knee and bring it forward. Check the alignment that the thighs are aligned parallel to the sides of the mat. Got those hips squared forward. Lifting the heart Getting a good stretch and back bend. Breathing into that stretch. And again, supporting right below that left hip if that helps you. And then fold forward into a sleeping pigeon. Again, hold each of these for 3 to 5 breaths. And then once you've completed this one, if you'd like to come into a seated position, I'm going to show you one more pose that's very good for the hips too. I'm going to bring the soles of my feet together, let the knees drop open. This is called cobbler pose. So in this pose, I'm going to let those knees open up again, opening up that pelvic area. And a good way to do this is when you're on your inhale, just let the knees slowly come up. And on the exhale, press them towards the mat. So getting a good opening of that pelvic area. And this again, hold it for a good 3 to 5 breaths. And these are wonderful things to help your hips. Come see us at Fit Yoga. Thank you.